Okay, so we've made it here to the plan of action. This is my favorite part because it helps to take everything you've learned in this course and to actually write down what is your plan. What are you going to do once we're done and well, you'll always be part of my love and my group, my campers, but you have to make your dreams come true. So I hope I've fueled some confidence in you and to help build your dreams. But at the end of the day, this is your dream. And so let's put things into action. So we're going to talk about your plan in terms of AQs, your PQs, and your leadership and coolness factor. So I'll spend some time talking about that at the end. But by now you know what AQs are. The AQs include your grades, your test scores, and the rigor of your curriculum. So the number of honors or APs that you've taken, or if your school offers IB courses. Okay. So now you want to think about, now that you know kind of what colleges you're planning on applying to, including your reach schools, your realistic reaches, and then all the way down to your likely schools, you have a sense of what kind of grades and test scores you need to achieve those goals. So you really want to be honest with yourself about what are the gaps that you have in terms of your AQs. And what are some steps that you can take between now and the time you apply? So it's different. If you're currently a freshman, or it's different than, you have the luxury of time. If you're currently a sophomore, it's different. You have some time, but you want to get on it. And if you're currently a junior, you know that you've got to really put your plan into action, because this is it, really. Okay, so what are you going to do? This can include improving a single grade in a single class, right? Think about what you're thinking about majoring in and what classes really need to stand out and have really good grades in. So think about that. You can work towards a specific score on in your testing. So getting, honing your skills and doing practice exams and studying for it, getting some test prep. There's a number of ways, depending on your budget, there's a number of ways to improve your test scores. So hopefully all of that makes sense. So making sure that your AQs match your test scores should sort of match your grades, right? What you don't want is a high test score and really low grades. That would show a disparity of just how smart you are, but maybe not putting that into action in the classroom. So think about all those pieces and how they match up, okay? All right, so I've written here for you on your plan. I've given you three goals. You don't need to have 3 goals. You might have more than 3, you might have less than 3. But here's what I want you to understand. You're going to set a goal, and you want to be as specific as possible with your goal, right? Improve my English grade, for example. Improve my math grade, and list the course specific that you're taking right now. What are the immediate steps that you need to take right now, like within the next 24 or 48 hours? And then what is the timeline, and what are the habits that are going to be formed because of this effort that you made? So let me give you an example. So let's say that your goal was to, hi there. Let's say your goal is to improve your English grade, okay? So the immediate step is to take a look at what you have immediately coming up that's due. It could be a paper, a 3-page paper, a 5-page paper, could be a lot longer than that, or an exam or something. So take a look at what's coming up and reach out to your teacher and see if you don't have the rubric, which you should, for how you're going to be graded. You want to make sure you have that, okay? So that's the immediate thing. Then a timeline. So then for me, I would say if you have a paper that's due 2 weeks from now, the timeline might be, okay, make a first draft of that paper within the next 3 days or so, 3 to 5 days, and turn it in to get some feedback directly from your teacher, okay? She or he is going to love this. Not many teenagers do that or think to do that. Then get their feedback. Now, one of the things that you could do right away is reach out and say, to your teacher, I'd like to turn in a draft. Is that okay with you? Give me a timeline of when I should turn it in so that you can give me feedback in time for me to make changes before it's finally due. So that would be really responsible. So then you make a timeline, backwards map it. This is the due date. This is when I'm going to get my draft in. This is when she or he says she's going to get some feedback to me, and then I'll have time to make the changes and then turn it in, okay? So that's what I mean by being really specific. Now, what are the habits that you're going to form because of this effort that you make? You may just find that you are going to use that same formula because it's going to work. I promise you it's going to work. And when you see that improved grade, you're going to start to develop. You're going to say, hey, that worked last time. I'm going to do a first draft well before things are due, and I'm not going to wait to the last minute anymore. Okay. So I know for me, I didn't really learn how to write well until I was a sophomore in college. And that's because I turned in 2 to 3 drafts of my final paper, which was like a 15 to 20 page paper. So I finally got it, and I got the formula that worked for me. So you're going to develop habits that work for you, and that's the goal. Okay, let's talk about your PQs. So now PQs include your involvement and your interests, so career interests or just general interests, and personal background. So this is like a kind of a little bit of a catch-all and a little bit separate from what I'm going to speak about with the leadership and coolness factor. But understand that everything that you have interest in, not just related to your major or what you want to be when you grow up, your career goals, but there are a lot of people that just have interest in, reading has been maybe something that you've done all your life, or you have a real interest in history, or you have, you love paddle boarding for fun. It's not a team sport, it's not something part of your school, but you just love doing it. So think about the things that you really enjoy doing. I often share that I love sports. I think the competitive nature of sports, and sort of specifically with colleges, and I love college football and rites of passages and traditions of colleges, things like that. If I could spend all my time researching that, I would do that. So think about what you just naturally love doing, not because it's going on a resume or not because it's related to your career, long-term goals, but just because you just enjoy doing them. Okay? The second piece I want you to think about and consider is really what is your story? What is your personal background? And have you taken some time to reflect on who you are and sort of what you believe in, and how you might share that in 60 seconds or less with an adult or on paper? Because that's what this process is about. Those that stand out in this process are ones who have taken time to reflect on all their gifts and talents and strengths, and just personal history, and have a way to share that. So you want to think about that. So there's sort of 2 pieces. Now, the involvement, I will say this. Most of the time, the teenagers that I work with, wherever they come to me, it's typically between sophomore and junior year sometime. Rarely do they come in freshman year. But I would say 8 out of 10 students don't have enough involvement for the colleges that they're thinking they want to apply to. Okay, now let me be clear. Most of you have enough involvement, a few organizations, some sports, just being naturally involved, like what most high school teenagers do, is typically enough. Most of you are going to apply to schools that are admitting more than 50% of their applicant pool, and you're going to be just fine. Those of you who are really thinking about applying to schools that admit less than 35%, you really want to think about how does all of my involvement and the things the organizations I'm part of, the interests that I have, the things I do in school, out of school, all of those things, how do they align with what I say I want to do in the short term and in the long term? And how am I showing or growing in my leadership and my impact, which will lead me to the next section in a second. So you want to, again, think about what are the immediate steps to take. So think about wherever you are in the grade, in terms of the school year. Think about, is this a club or an organization I want to be president of or vice president or run for that? Will you have to run for it? Do you need the coach or the moderator to nominate you for that role? So what do you need to do? I'm really talking about specifics. Like, how are you thinking about what am I doing today that's going to get me to a goal that will happen months from now? So I'll give you an example. For me, I ran for student body president. And I didn't know that I was going to do that, but the year before I ran for office I was the commissioner of assemblies and rallies. And I loved doing that, and I knew that I wanted that role when I was in like 7th grade. My high school was from 7th grade to 12th grade. So watching Christina, I think her name was Christina, do that role when I was a 7th grader, I was like, that's what I want to do. So I don't know if I was conscious of it per se, but I saw that she was a cheerleader. I saw that she was pretty active and outgoing. She had a lot of friends. So I tried to mirror what she did, thinking, I don't know, maybe consciously or subconsciously thinking that's what I needed to do in order to win that job, or to have the qualities of a person who would have that job, that role. Now I needed to be elected, so I also needed to be a likable person, I suppose. But I really had the frame of mind from 7th grade. It's kind of crazy, right? That's what I wanted to do. And by the time I was a sophomore, I was gonna run for that office, right, at the end of the sophomore year going into junior year. You had to be a junior in order to have that role. So literally think about what can you do now, the steps that you need to take now, and the timeline in order to achieve a goal that's later down the road. Okay. And again, what are the habits that I'll form because of my effort? For me, like I said, it sounds funny, or sounds maybe like I was a little bit of a politician perhaps, and maybe I was subconsciously or unconsciously. I didn't really realize I was doing that, but I loved people, and I loved being a cheerleader, and I loved being outgoing, and I loved helping to make assemblies fun and rallies fun. So those are things that stick with me. And even today, the way I had to make an agenda for a rally or an assembly was minute-to-minute schedules. And that's how I run my life now. And when I run workshops, I run minute-to-minute schedules. So there's an example of a habit I formed. Okay, so let's talk specifically about this. Now, leadership and coolness factor. So this is something that if you are serious, really serious about trying to find something that stands out for you, okay? I'm not saying this is the only way to get into highly competitive schools. I'm saying it's one way to help make you stand out. There's no guarantees, of course, ever. But I want you to understand that there are teenagers who go really above and beyond and do impact leadership, okay? So I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see all of this and also share with you some things. So when I was an admission officer at Vassar College, at the very top of our notes section, if a student was the student body president, the captain of a major sport on their school, if they were the editor-in-chief of the yearbook or newspaper, if they were a Girl Scout Gold Award or an Eagle Scout, or if they were like a state or national champion, right? So Model United Nations, or an athletic, winner, or I guess spelling bee, but spelling bee is not for high school, it's for middle school. So if they were something like that, and we saw that in their application, that thing went at the top of their application. It was noted at the top of their application. So my question is usually to students is, what do they have in common? Well, they're extremely dedicated. They typically are voted on by their peers. They've had a trajectory. You can't just show up to senior year and say, I think I'll be the editor-in-chief of the yearbook. That doesn't happen that way. You have to have put in the time and sort of started at the bottom and worked your way up and earned respect along the way. So these tend to be students who are leaving impact, giving impact leadership, leaving a legacy of some sort, and they've been respected by their peers along the way, and adults as well. So I want you to think about these questions. When I meet with my private clients who are really thinking about dream colleges like HYPRS and those like it, I ask them, if you could spend 10 to 15 hours a week doing something, anything, what would that be for you? And really, people come up with all kinds of things. They say different things, and it doesn't have to be, again, something that looks good on the resume. It's just, what would you do? What would you do? And why do you choose that? Why do you love it? So I asked them to give me a little bit more. Why do you love it? So really dig deep. Why do you love that thing? And who would you serve? Who would you serve? Is it a person? Is it yourself? Is it a community, an organization, or is it an institution? Who would you serve? How would you serve? What does that look like? Time, talent, or treasure? And when would you do this? Okay, so I'm going to give you 3 examples of people who I have known, and so this is their coolness factor, and that it's time, it's talent, and it's treasure. Okay, so here's the first example. The first example is time. So this young student would go to, this is in my book, chapter 17. She would go with her father. He's an eye surgeon. When he would do free clinics to help underserved communities get eye exams, she would go and she'd say, what happens if they can't afford or can't get classes? And he didn't really have a good answer. So as she got a little bit older, the long and the short of it is she started this little project, and it first started small and then it grew. She put baskets at different eye doctors' offices where she lived and other places, and would say, anybody who comes in for a new prescription, if they could donate, if they want to, they donate their old glasses and put them here and in the baskets. And then every so often she'd go and she'd collect those glasses from the baskets. And so over time, I won't go into complete detail, but over time she started her little mini free clinics for a small group that she knew, and then it grew. And over 3 years, she was able to give back over 500 pairs of glasses. Okay, so it's just time, talent. So a different story is a student who at her campus, there was an N-word incident that happened at the freshman level, and this student she was already a senior, I believe, at this time. She was the president of the Diversity Club, and the Diversity Club was kind of new at this institution, at this high school. So it wasn't that big of a group, but she, as the president, she decided that this was not okay at her school. It's a private school, private girls' school. She didn't want it to continue to happen, so she wanted to help change the culture. Well, what did she do? Her talent, she loved making movies, making films, short films. And so what she did was I was the dean of students at the time. She came to me with her idea. So finding an adult who can support you. And she wanted to do a movie about the Big Eight. Sort of the Big Eight includes like racism, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, gender, disability, ability. There are like 8 things that sort of we have discrimination on. Okay, so anyway, what she did was she found several girls from each grade level that she was going to interview, and they sort of ran the gamut of race themselves and age and geographically where they lived and where they came from. And she, over a course of several weeks, interviewed them at lunch, and she did these mini interviews, and it took many hours to put together this about 30 to 35 minute video. Because of her talents and her efforts, she then set off a number of different things that happened and left a legacy at the school. Because of her, years later, there was a diversity conference. Because of her, years later, there were students who were going annually to a diversity conference. So lots of things happened because of her talents that she gave. The last example is treasure, right? Fundraising for different organizations. That's not new, but this student, he was, I think he was the quarterback and maybe the captain of his football team. It doesn't matter, but he was on the football team. And so he didn't have a lot of time because his summer was spent getting ready and practicing for the season. And then obviously during the school year, he was doing schoolwork and also being on the football team. That was a lot of time. So he wanted to make an impact. So what he did was he sent an email or somehow communicated to all his family and friends of his parents and asked them to donate for every point that his team scored for that season. And he had chosen, I want to say it was Children's Hospital, CHLA, I think it was, Children's Hospital LA. And so basically that was it. That was what he did. And so they had made a pledge at the beginning of the season. And then at the end, he tallied up the points, and he sent them emails saying this is how much, and this is the link that you can make a donation, etc. Now, one other piece that he did is for as many football players that could, he took them on a little field trip for half day or so, a couple hours, to the hospital in the summertime so that those teammates could see and be there with patients. And so they made a little visit. So then later during the season, when they were, close, when they were maybe winning already and they didn't really need to score any more points, he might huddle them up and say, come on, let's score. Like, let's get one more score. Let's get one more touchdown. Because that's going to mean more dollars for those kids that we saw. So, I get choked up just thinking about it. So that's what he did. So there's ways to think about what is your gift? What are you really good at? And can you do time, talent, or treasure? Okay. So this here is for you to get brainstorming and thinking about what you can do. And again, this is not for everyone. This is certainly not mandatory. And I would say for every 10 kids that I talk to about this, maybe one really goes above and beyond and actually makes something like this happen. So don't feel like you have to do it, but I'm just giving you some ideas so that you too can have a coolness factor and leave an impact in your community, an organization or institution, or for a specific person. Okay? All right, so that was a long lesson, but this is really key. Your plan of action. What are you going to do? All right, that's all for now, and go get them.